Andreas. I am the Vice Chancellor of the RUM. I have been the Provost of the RUM for over 2 years, and I have been working with our Chancellor Oswin and our Chancellor Emeritus Erin, or Eleanor, on this virtual RUM experiment that we've sort of been conducting here for the past several weeks. One of the things that we've discovered is that in this process of building these classes and this experiment here, is that teachers struggle with virtual teaching. Students, I think certainly there are students who are probably not having a great time either with it, but a lot of teachers are struggling, and mostly that's because when you're teaching in a classroom with somebody who's also in the classroom with you physically, you can read their body language more easily. You can tell their mood more easily. The camera does obscure some of what people see. In fact, there's a feature in Zoom that says "touch up my appearance," which in theory makes my skin look better and it makes me look more, I don't know, something. But it's hard to connect with people virtually, right? And I know that Hillary's on the phone or on the call, and her camera's off right now. And that's an example of another way that it can be difficult in order to teach virtually is your students can turn off their cameras. They can turn off their microphones. They may be working away. I know that Eleanor has been in calls with me when we're talking about stuff, and I'll go, yeah, Well, she knows that I'm not giving her my full attention when I'm doing this. It's much easier to multitask when you're not in the same room as everybody else. It's easy to, I saw somebody post on Facebook the other day that the best thing about not having a camera or a microphone for their Zoom sessions is they can turn everything off and do point control drills, and nobody knows. Well, okay, but as a teacher, that's not a great feeling, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, everybody, please turn your cameras on. At least I can see your faces that way. And Zoom gives you the option to do a speaker view, and it gives you the option to do a grid view, so I can see everybody relatively easily, right? So I can see that I've got Marquita's face is up there, and Finn's face is up there, and Eleanor's face is up there, and then Lynn and Anya, doesn't have a camera, and then Hillary. They're all here in the class, but they're all muted, and they're all with their cameras off. Ah, there she is. See, so now Hillary's turned her camera on because she knows that as a teacher, you want to get your students' attention, right? So this is great because now I can see everybody's face who at least has a camera. And Anya has already apologized for not having, she already said she doesn't have a camera. It's not her fault. It is what it is, right? So I can change the view back and forth, be able to see what people are doing in Zoom. That's something that tends to be fairly universal across conferencing software. So like WebEx has the same thing. There is a grid view for WebEx, and then there's a speaker view for WebEx. The difference is the speaker view for WebEx doesn't ever let you focus on yourself. So for these classes, what I like to do is I pin my window, or the teacher's window, to the main portion of the screen so that it looks like they're teaching you when you sit down in front of a YouTube, right? And when I pin it, that prevents it from doing what it's just done right now, which is now Marquita's face has popped up on my screen because I unpinned my video, and it either thinks she's talking or something, I'm not sure, but it popped her name up on the screen. So so I'm just going to go ahead and repin mine back again, and people can see that in the video. So the first thing is you want to ask people to go ahead and turn their cameras on as much as possible. Then the next thing you want them to do, counterintuitively, is to mute their microphones, because any sound in the background is going to draw attention away, is going to draw Zoom's attention away from the speaker. And so, if it's pinned, then it won't do that, but it can still be distracting. So you want to have everybody turn their microphones off. Now, Zoom has the option as a host for me to mute all, but then when you try to unmute, you can't unmute. So I try not to do that.
Okay.
Now everybody's right? And now everybody can go back and mute themselves manually so that you can all be have the opportunity to ask your questions when you want to ask them. Right. Some of you aren't paying attention, and that's fine. You know, but that's something we do. We do the unmute coming into the call for two reasons. The first one of which is that we want to be able to establish that everybody needs to be paying attention, and the second one is that there's this thing called Zoom bombing, where if your URL gets out into the wild, people will come and basically harass you in your call. But if everybody's on mute to start off with, then I can figure out who doesn't belong and I can boot them out. Okay, so these are technological pieces of this, right? This is the tech, and the tech really isn't the hardest part. The hardest part is the engagement. The hardest part is getting people to actually pay attention. And even though I've got almost everybody's camera on, and I've got, you know, and people are all muted, but they're all looking like they're paying attention. They all look like they're paying attention to me. I don't know if I have your engagement or not. And I'm going to progress through this class really sort of not knowing, right? There's no real way to know if I have engagement until we get to like question and answer period. And so if I get some questions, then I'll feel better about it. But like I taught a poetry class early on in the ERUM, and I had a good 12 or 15 people in the class, but I definitely didn't have that level of engagement that I had when I taught the class several years before to 8 people at an in-person event. At the in-person event, everybody stayed and sat down and wrote their own poems, and we performed them, and we read them to each other, and we talked about them. And in the online class, one person wanted to write, but they didn't want to share. And so we ended the class way early, right? I had slated 90 minutes for the class. I think we were done in 35 minutes or 40 minutes. So the hard part is getting engagement. And so there are some things that you can do in order to get that engagement from people so that when you're teaching in this venue here, you can make sure that people are at least given the opportunity to participate. And the big one is, so the first one is stop thinking about these as actual classes. And I want to explain what I mean by that. We aren't a real school. Students are not required to attend. There is no mandatory attendance taken. There are no real quizzes or tests. There are no grades. People are here because they want to be here. So if you've joined the class, if I have my class here, I have 8 or 7 participants besides me in this class. And I know that you want to be here, so it's my job to keep it that way, right? As opposed to where, you know, either your parents are paying for you to go to school or you're paying for you to go to school. There's a level of there's a negative connotation. There's potential negative consequences for you blowing me off while you're in the class, right? Join the class, don't pay attention. Maybe you miss something and you fail the next quiz or the next test, and now you know your grade goes down. That's a negative consequence. That doesn't exist in the RUM. That's good. I like not having negative consequences in the RUM, but right, as Finn says, I'm not holding anybody hostage. I need to keep you engaged. So I need to provide the information that I'm giving you, not just in an interesting, not just in a manner that is informative, but also in a manner that is interesting. And one of the best people at this is Aveline, who isn't in the class, but the block printing lady, right? She's great at it. She holds these classes. They go on for hours. And she has hundreds of people attend her classes. And she's really good at staying engaged with the camera. It's almost like it's a show. She's like putting on a talk show. Now, she does them in Facebook Live and not in Zoom. They aren't necessarily all that different. The biggest difference is that in Facebook Live, I can't talk to you. I can only comment on the keyboard. It's not really all that different between that and here, especially if everybody keeps their cameras off, right? But she's really good at keeping people engaged. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. But really, the way for me to come at it is this isn't a class. This is a meeting. I'm here to do a webinar with you. You have voluntarily joined the webinar. It doesn't cost you anything. So in order to keep you here, I need to keep you engaged. So one of the best ways to do that is in a lot of in-person classes at the RUM. First of all, it's much easier to interrupt. And I want to be very clear here. If anybody has a question, if you click on the participants button at the bottom of your screen, it will bring up all of the participants on the right-hand side, and you can hit a raise my hand button. It's a little blue hand. If you have a question, raise your hand, and I'll see it. And then see, Erin has just raised her hand. I think you should be able to see that. And I'm going to ask Erin. Erin actually has a question. You have a question, Eleanor? Or are you raising your hand as an example?
I was trying it as an example. Thank you.
So now I can click, sure. So now I can click lower hand and it goes away, right? And so not only did it raise her hand, but it pushed her to the top of the list of people, right? So, so you can raise your hand. If anybody has a question, stop me. Raise your hand and stop me. My class is not so organized that I just have to roll through it all the way through. But I will say that there are a lot of people in the room, a lot of people who teach at SCA events who are like that. And so they stand up and they have a paper, right? Now I would like to talk about Norman clothing. Norman clothing is the best. It has long sleeves and also long gowns, and it is sometimes purple or black and has trim, and so they go on like that, right? And that's not very engaging, right? And then they'll go through and they'll get to a certain point and then they'll have it like in their script, questions. I mean, does anybody have any questions? And everybody's asleep. It's even worse here, right? Because you can turn your camera off if you're bored. You can go watch Facebook if you're bored. You can just hang up if you're bored. Again, there's nothing that keeps anybody here. Aggie has a question.
I do have a question. So one of the classes that I was thinking about teaching or asking if I could teach, would it be possible to log in on multiple cameras, so including a tablet, so I've got, or multiple devices, so I have views from different angles? Yes. If I was trying to do here, I want to show you this.
Yes, absolutely. We've had 2 classes or 3 classes that have run like that. One was David O'Block-Morrow's poker work class. He actually has multiple webcams plugged into his computer, and you can tell Zoom to use different webcams. Or Matildas, who has done some Scribble classes recently for us, has got her phone mounted on some kind of a pole so that it overlooks her Scribble area, and then she's got the webcam on her computer. So she logs onto the Zoom session twice, and then we pin. In her case, it's more difficult because the microphone on her phone doesn't work. So it won't default to that. When she starts to talk, it'll stay on her webcam camera because that's where the microphone is. But we pin her phone video to the screen, and then she can talk while she's working, and you can see it. And all of those classes are up on the YouTube channel, which if Eleanor is able to hang out around for a couple more minutes, maybe she can post that. Otherwise, I'll share it with you at the end of the class. And you can go and see how she's done it. And Hillary, if you need technical support for that, of course, you can anybody can always just ping me on Facebook and just say, hey, I need help with this. I can't get this to work technically, whatever, something, right? And I'll help you out, right? I'm here for that. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, you can log on with multiple devices or multiple cameras, and then you can edit them back and forth. I could even do a side-by-side thing if I can figure that out. There's ways to do that if I can figure that out. Key is that if you have 2 devices on at the same time, you have to have one muted, not just their microphone muted, but the speaker muted too, or you're going to get a bunch of feedback. So it's easier to do from a recording standpoint if you've got multiple webcams plugged into one computer, but that might be more difficult to sort of manipulate, right, in Zoom. Okay, so you gotta stay engaging, you gotta stay interesting. And so the first way to do that is don't wait until you're 30 minutes into the class to ask if there are any questions. Engage people deliberately. So, Finn, what are some ways, I know that you're a project manager like I am in your real life. What are some ways that you have tried to keep your engineers or your developers engaged during status calls or your daily stand-up?
Well, I wear funny stuff.
What are you talking about? I don't know what you're.
They know my personality. I will call them out personally when we're talking. Are you seriously asking me, right? You wanted me to answer?
I am asking you. Yes, I'm absolutely asking you.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's background noise here. I apologize. But Yeah, so you call them out personally, and so far, even though it was recommended by higher management for us to use webcams just so we can get that personal touch, since we don't have that now, and get a feel for some body language, nobody else is doing it but me. So I have fun with it. So far, I've making recommendations. So I can't see anybody else, but I will call them out personally. They will. Some people only speak when spoken to,
Right.
and that's it. But you can't help that. You can't make somebody do it.
Right.
So it's making sure everybody's engaged by, asking everybody, have you said everything you need to say? Do you have any questions? And maybe just asking each person.
Right. So engage people directly. So if you know the people in your class, that's very helpful. But even if you don't, right? Like I don't, I know Fiodata and I know Eleanor and I know Finn. I don't know everybody, completely 100%. I don't know Marquita very well. I don't know Lynn very well. I know you both, but I don't know you like a lot, right? And so I might ask one of you, what's a way that would help you get engaged? So Marquita, what's a way that would help you get engaged? If you were feeling particularly unengaged by a class, what's something that you wish sometimes that a teacher would do?
Not that. Yeah, I'm that kid who hates being called out in class.
Sure.
Not sure.
And that's okay.
I'm the sponge. I want to listen, and I process kind of later, or as I'm going. But yeah.
Sure.
As much as I hate being called out, that's probably about the best way to make sure people are alive and
all right.
whatnot.
And Eleanor's got her hand raised.
I wanted to let you know that in the chat, I posted the link to the RUM's YouTube channels, like you asked. And I don't know if it's Marquetta or Marquita. I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm a teacher, high school teacher, and sometimes we have students that simply do not want to be called on. One of the things that Zoom has that I do appreciate is in their chat, you can talk to somebody privately and never worry about letting that teacher know up front, hey, you know what, I would love to be on here. I'd like to have my camera on, just not really comfortable with being called on in class. So I absolutely use that. I always tell my kids, let me know. Just let me know. And so far, our RUM e-school teachers have been fantastic and would totally be okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as students, if you feel like you need to, if that's something that you don't want to be called on, you can always talk to your teacher in the private chat. And we try to make sure that the teachers know about the different features of Zoom when they use it. And that we try to make sure that that's something that they can use. So the one way to do it is just outright engage people. Another way to do it is to give people like tasks. So like, depending on the class that you're teaching, right? And again, I'm sort of coming from this from a meeting runner sort of view, or a facilitator's point of view, or a webinar point of view, right? Have activities throughout the class. Instead of having lecture for 30 minutes and then working for 30 minutes, if it's possible, talk for a little bit and then have people do a thing. For example, in Lynn's Blackwork class, if that was more of a hands-on kind of class, and not all classes are like this, right? So it doesn't work for everything, but this is just a possibility. If you've got people who have their materials, you can talk about a technique, and then you can say, okay, we're going to work now for 5 or 10 minutes. Everybody do a thing, and then we're going to hold it up in front of the camera so people can see it, right? And then if you're not comfortable showing it, then you say, I'm not comfortable showing it, or whatever. But you work it out. But the point is you break up the talking. So there isn't just droning on and on and on and on, right? The next thing is as a culture, we love to abuse PowerPoint. PowerPoint was never designed to do what a lot of people force it to do. And I can see Finn laughing there because she and I are both guilty of this, I'm sure. And we have to suffer through it with lots of other people being guilty of it as well. PowerPoint's really not made to convey a lot of data, and people use it to convey way more data than it's capable of, and in the end you end up losing most of your relatable content because of it. You know, you want to have the minimum amount of presentation as possible. Whatever the least amount of your face on the screen as you can do and still get everything across, that's what you want to do. So if you're going to teach for an hour, you should not have 45 minutes of slides. You shouldn't, because it's really easy to just go, right? Now, there are ways to mix it up. And again, if you're doing like an art history class or a class on different kinds of trim, you know, chances are you're not going to have all that stuff there to hold up and show people. You're going to have pictures of it, and you're going to show those pictures off. Just don't let the slideshow dominate the class. Never go 5 minutes without asking for input or some kind of help, or if anybody has any questions. Okay, so we haven't done that because people have been consistently raising their hand and asking, but never go more than 5 minutes without waiting, without trying to get engagement from people overtly. So does anybody have any questions? And Anya, I know that you're on chat, so you can't talk verbally, but you can still, if you've got something that you want to ask or say, you know, you can do that. Yes, and you have been commenting. So we've talked in here about, Finn just watched a class on LinkedIn Learning about this with meetings, about keeping people engaged in meetings. And we talked about teaching is a sort of performance as well, okay? So so that's a possibility. Go ahead, Marquetta, you come back, catch it when you come back. And yes, the slide PowerPoint thing, it's a problem. I'm not calling out anybody's names, and I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but some people do like to rely on slides. And it is absolutely, you know, sometimes teachers don't like to have their faces in front of everybody either. And it's really interesting because when you take a class at a RUM, your teacher has to be there in front of you. And yet, Eleanor will tell you, we had to talk a bunch of people into using Zoom. They wanted to do Facebook Live because there would be less interaction rather than more interaction. And it was weird. Like, I was trying to figure that out, but it has to do with, at an event, I'm wearing the clothes that I picked out, and there's nobody else around who doesn't want to be there. There's no dogs to bark. There's no kids to fight in the background. You know, my kids are downstairs watching YouTube right now, and if something happens in a way that they don't like it, there'll be a fight, and you'll be able to hear it. And that embarrasses some people. And then some people don't like how they look on camera. There's all sorts of reasons why a teacher might not want to be on camera either. Okay, so other things that you need to think about when you're teaching an online class. Make sure that all of your stuff works. So make sure that your Zoom client is up to date if you're using Zoom. Make sure that your internet is on. Make sure your video camera, your webcam works. Make sure that the microphone works. Make sure that you can connect. Make sure that your materials are prepped and ready. So if you're gonna share something, it should be open and in the background behind your Zoom screen. So you can just click share and have it go immediately. You can't see this. I'm gonna share my desktop just so you can see the desktop, and I'm gonna move things around a little bit so that you can see it a little bit better. But I have way too much stuff up on my screen, okay? So I'm gonna show this to you here in just a second, right? Here we go, and I'm gonna click the share button, and I'm gonna say screen 2, and click share, and then the Zoom interface is gonna go away. And now you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 different windows open on this screen alone. And that doesn't include the other 3 screens that I have set up in my little command center here. So, you know, simplify so that you can't get confused. You can't accidentally bring up the wrong thing. Now, I don't actually have a presentation for this class, so it doesn't matter what I'm showing you. Arrington is doing a baronial polling, so I'm in the process of working out zip codes and stuff. But my point is make sure your stuff works. Make sure you know what's written down. Don't improvise your way through a class, okay? Only people who are really, really good at thinking on their feet can improvise their way through a class. Have your materials, know your materials, practice with your materials. This is something that Count William says all the time about Bardic, and as we said earlier, teaching is just a different kind of performance, right? Know your stuff. Don't expect to be able to just read blindly a paper that you have written. It may not translate to being spoken, right? Maybe it just doesn't work as a spoken piece. Maybe it refers to diagrams and stuff that you don't actually have in the document. You know, there's all sorts of reasons why you want to practice first. So practice first. And it doesn't have to be this big, long, you know, if I'm teaching an hour-long class, I got to practice it 4 times. That's 4 hours out of my day before I get to teach a class. But make sure that you can click back and forth between everything you need to click back and forth between. You know, not everybody is as familiar with the technology as I am, and that's okay. You don't need to be, but just be familiar enough with it to make it work, okay? Know how to, if you're going to use a setup, for example, like what, oh, Anya has a question. Anya. Start classes 10 minutes out the way you did. That gives, you talking about having the class running before the class time starts? Yes, right. It gives students time to come into the class early, ahead of time, and be ready to take the class, right? Because sometimes people show up and they hit go on their webcam and then they realize, oh, I don't have a pen and paper, or I don't have my water, or I don't have whatever, right? Or maybe I don't know how to use the software and I have to download it. And this is the first time I'm using Zoom, so it has to download. Oh no, there's an update. I have to do the update, you know, all sorts of stuff. You start the class ahead of time. And at the eRUM, we facilitate that for you, right? The teachers usually do not host their own classes for a variety of reasons, but we start the class for you ahead of time. We make sure that the web, the live stream is running, and I think the live stream is running right now. It says it is. But if you're doing it yourself, like say you're doing it for your local group, right? Or maybe the kids at your kid's school, right? I know that Lynn has a bunch of kids and she does a lot of stuff with her children, a lot of activities. You know, maybe you're doing something that's not SCA related and you're gonna run it yourself. Make sure that you know how to make everything work. Marquita asks, could we maybe ask instructors to remind us what we'll need for class? Paper, paint, etc. That's a great idea. And one of the things that Eleanor, I think would agree with me if she's still on. I think she maybe has dropped off and that's okay. She had something to do. But one of the things that she would probably agree with me on is that the RUM has not done a great job of getting A, good class descriptions, and B, making sure that material is pre-noted, right? So that you know if you're going to be taking a class on glass cutting and it's a participatory class, well, you need to have some glass, you need to have a glass cutter. So that we should be telling people, we should be telling teachers, hey, what do you need for the class? What do you need your students to have for the class? Now, because it's virtual, there's a lot less of that sort of thing. But I know again that, for example, Matildas has taught 2 Scribble classes, and at least one of them has been participatory. People have watched her do the stuff, and she has instructed them through drawing their own illumination on the screen or on their paper, and then they've shown it to her, and Eleanor was really happy with the stuff that she.
I was super happy with it. I'm still here. But yeah, that was very, very cool to have that set up.
Right.
And it's a great idea. Maybe we can start adding that to the schedule to have those materials.
You should start asking that. All right, so know your tools. If you're going to use multiple cameras, know how to switch back and forth between them. Test it out. Run your own Zoom session, or not even a Zoom session. I mean, whatever you've got, but do it ahead of time so that you know that you can make your stuff work. And then have a fallback plan. What happens if one of your webcams suddenly dies? Like computers, you know, we've had more than once, we've had a problem where somebody was supposed to run a live share, and Facebook it bombed. It wouldn't run. We ended up converting it to a Zoom class, you know, we ended up starting half an hour late, right? You know, we've had other instances where people who have like wireless internet, right? So if you're running off of your phone, or if you're running off of wireless internet because you live in a rural area, you know, your feed may be really, really bad. Your bandwidth may be slow. So it worked fine at one point, but then later in the day when you're doing it at 6 o'clock, everybody's home and they're getting on the internet. So your wireless internet is now slower because of that. And then now you can't do the Zoom. So what's your backup plan? Well, your backup plan should be to dial in on your phone for Zoom anyway, and then get the host to run through your presentation with you, which is another reason why we ask for people to give us the presentations so that we can have them when there is a presentation, so that just in case there's a problem, we can at least share the presentation for the person who's teaching the class. And Marquita's got another good idea. Note at minimum if a class is participatory, do it yourself, or lecture, right? Okay, so know your tools, have your fallback plan. If you're gonna have like a participatory whiteboard, Zoom has one of those. There's a way to do that where you can share the whiteboard. I don't think I've got it enabled right now because we don't use it very much, but that's something that you can use. So like if you were doing something with a bunch of kids, right, and you're gonna draw a picture and then you're gonna ask them to, you know, all work together to, I don't know, find Waldo or do something, whatever, you can do a big whiteboard and they can all use their mouses at the same time to try and figure out what's going on, make sure all that stuff works, right? Part of rehearsing is planning your agenda, understanding where things are at different points in time during the class. When are you going to get to here? When are you going to get to here? How much time are you going to give for question and answer period in the middle of the class, every 5 minutes or whatever, right? And I need to do another question and answer period. Now I'll do one in just a minute. But it's not just about teaching from beginning to end. It's about, I mean, in an hour-long class, you're really breaking it up theoretically into quarters, right? If nothing else, every 15 minutes or every 10 minutes, you should say, does anybody have any questions? And wait 5 minutes for those questions. And then at the end of that 5 minutes, you need to be able to say, okay, I'm going to ask that we hold all of our questions now until the next question and answer period, right? Because you don't want to get behind, because then that's going to impact things down the road. Now, again, we're not running an actual like litany of classes here. And so it's not like if we run over, we're going to be pushing into somebody else's day, right? But still, there is, you know, if you stay on longer, that means I have to stay on longer, right? And so you want to try and stay on time as much as possible. So planning your agenda out helps you with that. We don't. One of the things that they tell you to do in Zoom is to only allow like certified users, people with accounts to log in, and only allow people in your organization to log in. That doesn't really work for the RUM because we share our classes. Our classes are shared not just with the Midrealm, but I also share them on the Honorable Clover, which is a virtual classroom, a virtual class group, a part of the SCA. It's an SCA group that's built around providing classes for people who don't get to go to lots of events. And then there's another one called the SCA Virtual Classroom and Artisans Group, I think it's called. And I'll make sure that these are all linked in the descriptions, in the description of the video when I upload it to YouTube. But that's one that also does classes as well. But it's also they sort of do show and tell days and that kind of thing. But it's all virtual. It's all online for people who can't get to events. And of course, these two groups, their membership has exploded in the last 6 weeks, of course, because nobody's going anywhere. But because we share our URLs openly, not publicly necessarily, but openly within the SCA, we trying to restrict it to people who have accepted the meeting invitation doesn't work, right? Like if it was a meeting, even if it was a class where you're paying to go to the school, your professor has a roster of people who are going to come to every class, right? Because you're paying for a semester or a 6-week class or whatever. We don't do that here. So that stuff that sort of doesn't work very well. Other things that you can do is absolutely always introduce yourself. And I did a short introduction at the beginning of this class. I can do a much longer introduction if I feel like I need to. That does a couple of things. It can help to establish your bona fides sort of within the context of the class, right? Like I didn't go particularly in depth into, I've been a project manager for 5 years, and I currently work for a Fortune 200 multinational 80,000 person real estate conglomerate running the portfolio for their cloud tools and automation group with projects ranging anywhere from $25,000 to $2 million in scope, right? But I could have, and in theory, that might have told you something, right? I know almost everybody in the class, so I didn't feel like I needed to do that. But, you know, one of the things that we've all seen happen in classes, both in person and virtual, is the roaming expert shows up in your class and now they want to talk, right? And maybe they disagree with some sort of hypothesis that you have about Roman clothing, or maybe they have. I once saw at a class about transgenderism in the SCA, somebody who was not teaching the class, who was not trans, decided that they needed to talk for 15 minutes about trans issues, and that was, people, it was sort of had to step in and say, stop, it's not for you. This is not your class, right? But if you establish a little bit of authority on the subject, that gives you an opportunity to, help everybody know who you are. And that way, so you introduce yourself. If you've got enough time, or if you're doing a round table, then you can do short introductions for everybody. We do these peers roundtables every so often. We've done them in person. We've done 2 of them online. Mistress Hillary has run, is the person who runs most of those. And we try to ask people to do an introduction when they talk for the first time, right? Just stand up and introduce yourself when you start to talk for the first time. We usually don't get a lot of detail, but again, so far, most of us have known most everybody else, right? As this group gets more widely known outside of the Midrealm, we have started to have more and more people from outside the Midrealm come in. And so that's been happening. Something else is to think about is, it is okay, after I've gotten done now telling you, everybody should rehearse what they're doing and you should know where you are and you should have an agenda, it is okay to stray, okay? As long as you feel like it is okay to stray, then you're good. It's when you stray and you don't feel like you're in charge that it's a problem, right? You want to be in charge of what's happening as opposed to having somebody else run roughshod over you. So if you feel like you need to do some small talk at the beginning to get people comfortable, or if you need to, I don't know, stop in the middle of it and deal with something and you talk amongst yourselves or whatever, that's all okay. Again, that a lot of that has to do with how you're interacting with people and how people are interacting with you. And if you really feel like you're not getting people's attention, you can stop the class and say, hey, I want to tell you a story about a class that I went to where I wasn't really interested, but I wish I'd been paying more attention because of X, right? Or something like that. But I really feel like these are generally good methods of keeping yourself in a class, on topic, working to get engagement from your people in your class, and be able to move through it in a good and logical manner. And yes, there needs to be enough time, and yes, there needs to be interest. Always, of course, be courteous, even if somebody's in your face or being difficult or being problematic. A, I'm going to edit it out anyway, and B, everybody in the class is paying attention to what's going on. So, it's important for you to be in your best behavior and to be courteous as much as possible, no matter what anybody else is doing. And that's not because you expect them to be courteous to you back, it's just because it's the right way to do it. And courteous means different things to different people, and I get that, just like everybody else. But there's a general sort of baseline for how that works. And then again, ask for contributions. Ask for people to put their words in. Tell me what it is that you think. Tell me what it is that, what have I missed? So here we go. All right, I'm going to ask the question. All y'all, what have I missed? What do you think I should have brought up that I have not brought up in this class so far with 15 minutes left?
Can you hear me, Andreas?
I sure can.
All right, and my phone died, and so I had to switch over. See, I should have had it charged and prepared for the class. So one thing that I have seen, I've said it on probably 20 or more of the virtual RUM classes at this point, there's something that teachers call wait time. If you ask people a question or if you ask them to share, you don't have to sit there for 30 seconds or a minute and wait. You can go ahead and move on. You can count 6 to 8 seconds in your head. And if nobody has questions, it's okay to keep the momentum going, keep the class going, because it is more difficult just being one person on this side of a computer screen, essentially. So keep that moving, and it kind of keeps that interest going.
Sure. Anya, you've got your hand up. You want to type something in? How to get equipment that works for this. Applies not to engagement, but teaching. Equipment for the purposes of the class, or equipment to get into the class at all? Like you need a webcam and you need equipment to teach the class. I mean, so in order to teach a Zoom class, you have to have a computer and internet and a webcam of some kind, right? Or a phone, something that will get you on the internet. Certainly you want to have your, whatever it is that you need to have for your class prepared. So like, we all know, I'm going to pick on my own thing, right? We all know the Bardic Circle, where you go to the Bardic Circle and you sit down and it's pick, pass, or play, which means that it goes around the circle, right? It comes to you and you say, I'm going to sing this, or I'm going to ask this person to sing, or I'm going to pass. And then it comes that person and they want to sing, but they don't know what they want to sing yet. So they haul out their binder with 8 million pieces of paper in it. Some of them are on the rings. Some of them are not on the rings. And they go this, page, 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 page. Hold on. Hold on. It's another level of being prepared, right? Be prepared to do your stuff. So yes, Google provides Office software that does everything that Microsoft Office software does, only just enough slightly different that nothing quite works the same way, just enough to be infuriating. But still, you can do PowerPoint in Google. You can do Excel spreadsheets in Google. You can do charts and Word docs and photos and movies, and all that stuff works the same way, basically the same way everywhere. So if that's what you're talking about, Anya, then that's certainly part of it. Obviously, if your computer is from 2002 and you're running a 640 pixel camera, that's not going to work. You need to be up in the megapixel range. You need to have a high def camera, probably. You need to have broadband internet, probably. You need to have a computer that can keep up and run the Zoom client, which is pretty minimal. Like I can run on a Chromebook, but like a Windows 95 box, it might not run on, or a Windows XP box might not run on. So obviously you need to be up to date when it comes to that sort of stuff. So any other questions, any other ideas, things that I've missed, things that I should talk about?
Hello.
Hello.
Finn here. So there are other ways to break up a meeting or a training or a class than saying, are there any questions? Because you're leaving it kind of that you're asking a yes, no question. To help with engagement, leave it an open-ended question. You can ask somebody if they would, how would you do this differently? Or I know that you've been involved, Lynn, in doing this type of thing. Can you share with us what you have learned from it? That type of thing. It doesn't just have to be a yes, no question. And that might help with engagement, especially if people are afraid you're going to pick on them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Marquita has asked a question, have there been any Mac PC compatibility issues? So Finn, have you experienced in your wide experience as a project manager, have you experienced any compatibility issues when people share stuff in Google with Macs or PCs?
I see what you did there. Dork. No, because I don't know anybody who uses a Mac, for one.
So my experience is that once it's been uploaded into Google, you can at very least preview the doc in Google without having to open it. So even if you don't have Word, you can click on it in the Google directory and it'll open it up in like this sort of preview mode. Now that isn't going to show you everything, but almost all of these documents that we're sharing through the RUM that are in Google form, up in a Google Drive somewhere, you can also click the little drop down that says open in, and then it will give you the Google version of whatever that software is, right? So if you've got a Word doc, but you don't own Word, so it's a Word document, right? And that's what's been uploaded because that's what I was given by the teacher. And I uploaded it to the repository and I link it in the meeting invite or in the YouTube video and you click on it, but you don't have Word, one of two things is going to happen. Well, first of all, it's going to give you that preview. Then you can download it and open it in, like, everybody's got like WordPad on their, if you own a PC, you have WordPad, and that will at least open up a rich text version of the document. Now, you might lose some formatting, you may lose pictures, it may not be usable, but it should open. Or you click open in Google Docs, which is an option in the Google Drive, right? When you click on the document, it'll give you the option, should give you the option to open it up in Google whatever, Google Docs, Google Sheets for Excel, Google Slides for PowerPoints, and then it'll convert it for you right there. And then it's the Google format is platform independent. It's designed to be used on any system. So I can open Word documents on my phone, and I can open them. I can open the same document on my phone, on my Chromebook, on my PC here, on my laptop, and my friends who have Macs can open it all as well, because it's all this online format that's completely independent of the system that you're running. And that's the glory and the pain of Google is, yes, they have democratized computing, and at the same time, now they own everything. And so, you gotta. I know people who I'm friends with a guy who's a cybersecurity guy, and he won't use Google Drive. He uses Dropbox, and it's frustrating to me because I had to go and buy Word. I had to buy Microsoft Office, the online version of it, right? It's Office 365 basically. I had to go buy that, a yearly subscription to it, to be able to open these documents, because it's not in Google Drive, which means I can't open them up. I just can't go click, open them up, and Google show it to me. I have to actually download the file and open it on my computer, which like a peasant, but he doesn't trust Google, and so that's the way it works, right? Google, Dropbox does not automatically give you the ability to do that. But if it's we use Google Drive to upload everything, because nothing that we're uploading is critical, secure data, as far as I know. And so you always have the option to preview it, and then you can always open it up in a Google Doc there. So you bypass the compatibility issue like that. Nada, you've been very quiet. I crave input. You can unmute the microphone. She's smiling at me. All right, she says, two question evaluation for a session. What's the one thing you learned that you didn't know before? And two, what do you still don't understand? What do you still not understand? Ooh, I'm trying to think about how we would implement that on anything other than the teacher could say, hey, what do you think about here? Answer me these two questions in the chat.
That's the way that I used to use for library session evaluations when I was teaching library usage. I'd ask the kids as they were leaving, okay, answer these two questions really quick, and then you can go.
Okay.
That way I'd know what to change for the next time I did the session.
Sure. Okay, that's legit. You're asking people to talk when they may not want to talk, and of course people can just hang up when they want to, when it's virtual. But that's a good idea. We can talk to teachers about asking those questions, not for the purposes of any sort of like survey, but to give the teacher some immediate feedback before they leave the class.
That way you've got definite points that you can work to improve on the next time you teach. And you're going to be assuming, okay, I'm going to be teaching next time.
Good idea. It's a really good idea. I like that idea. We will talk about that idea. All right, cool. Anya has her hand up again. You said, or not enough info on, right? Oh, you need to tell people how to find the sign-in for RUM. You mean the RUM website where you go to register your classes to get your degree? Yes. Okay, so the website is rum.midrealm.org. It is currently one iteration of the site. We are working slowly to migrate over to a new version of the site. The new version of the site will be integrated into the midrealm.org authentication portal. So your Midrealm username and password that you use to log in and edit your Midrealm profile page will work for your RUM classes. At the moment, that is not integrated, so you have to have a separate RUM ID. There is an actual video about how to register your classes up on the YouTube channel, and I've shared it in the in the Rum community page. I can link to that again when I upload this to YouTube, I guess. When we have Rum in person, we have frequently brought an extra laptop with us for people to just use. And then when we help them get registered at the event, even if they don't log all of their classes, at least they can get their account set up. We're not going to set up a brand new SSO for this. There's already an SSO. We just got to get the Rum site into the Midrealm infrastructure, and that's just taking a while to get done. Lynn, you've taught classes for the Rum before, and I know that you are constantly finding things for your children to do so that they do not run ravaging through the countryside, eating all of the chickens and corn, as I know that they would do, making, of course, period sausage with all of those things along the way. So what are some of the ways what are some of the challenges that you felt that you had when you did your Blackboard class?
Well, earlier you described doing the body language, and that's how I read a lot of people, is watching their body language, but also at the beginning of my class, I give each student a little bag, and it's got needle and thread and fabric, so they can be working on it during the class. They can find their own pattern. And with this online class, well, I can't give everyone their own little bag of goodies. So there was that. I couldn't read a lot of people's body language. One recommendation I would have for teachers, like when you split it up and do the Q&A, maybe also add in a joke, a fun tidbit of some sort, something to just, rather than being monotone and blah, 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 any questions, blah, 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 break it up. Give them something fun to laugh about.
I've actually got here next to the screen here, I've got a website here with some of these things I've been using to sort of run the class. And number 14, it says, be engaging. And that's all it says, is be engaging, have good visuals and lively interaction. It doesn't say anything about how to do any of that stuff. Good visuals, set up your own meeting traditions. I'm like, what does any of that mean? Right? Like, you have to know, it's one of those things where it's like when they tell you, use the X35 connector, and you're like, well, what the heck is the X35 connector? And you're just supposed to know. Being engaging is a skill, and it's a lot of people, it's an innate skill, but it is something you can learn, and it is something that you can practice. So that's a great idea, is working in other little breaks in the class. It's best if you can work your puns into your actual material, like what you're teaching, but jokes are good too. So bye-bye.